Hello everyone, welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. I was told that the camera gets a little shaky and a little wobbly. It's just getting the settings all taken care of. Gotta get the settings fixed, so I'm working on that. Forgive me, pardon me, but what I've got is far more important than that. And that is more questions that I didn't get to on Saturday. So I want to get to them tonight, so let's get right down to it. Alright, question number one is from John Boss. He says, John, do you ever prep and keep items that you believe will be more useful to others than yourself to be used solely in trade in a shit-it's-the-fan scenario? An example is welder's flux wire. Every time I pass by it in Harbor Freight, I'm thinking I might like to stockpile that along with a cheapy welding unit. They're all Chinese cheapies at Harbor Freight, aren't they? The answer is yes, they're all shit. As a Marine, I'm sure you were told that all you ever needed was an M16 and a mess kit. Does anyone else have a nifty 50, that is a list of stockpiling items for use in trade? Maybe a pallet load of adult Depends diapers for when all the normies are going to be stumbling around crapping themselves. Oh man, you know, one of the things about stockpiling items that you don't need is it requires space to put these items. It requires the capital to invest in them and have it sit there. And it requires a unique knowledge of the future that would allow you to understand what it is other people are going to need. Perhaps that normie has the attic in his garage stuffed full of oops, I crapped my pants diapers. Right? You just don't know. You know, when you have a prepper group though, if you're isolated, it's so much more difficult in one way, right? You only have to worry about yourself, but right, you don't have your back covered. When you've got a group, people within that group, they're all doing the same thing. They're prepping and you're comparing, making sure that you're going to rely on each other. You can help each other out. But as far as I'm concerned, boy, I tell you, having a stockpile is difficult. Right? When I had my massive house and property, it was a different story. You know, now I live in a very tidy, neat little box, and there's not a lot of room for storing bulky items like adult diapers. It's been a long day, and I'm a bit thirsty. So, you know, it's your perspective. Do I need to trade? Is that going to be something that has a pseudo-psychological social effect where I'm going to trade with other people and it's going to help create a community feeling? That very well may be true, but you are an expert in your world, right? I'm an expert in mine. You have to decide what it is that works for you. You see what I'm saying? You know, so if you see that there's going to be people out there and you know that set of families down the street, they don't really have their act together, but in some ways they do. They're going to be useful to have as neighbors. You love them, you care about them. You know, so you think I'm going to stock up on a few things that I can give to them, right? It'll form a bond between us. I mean, those types of things are great. You know, it's the psychology that matters so much, the interactions between humans. Right? It'll let them know you care. It'll endear them to you and you to them. It makes your tighter-knit unit. Some people don't want their fucking neighbors near them. They can't stand their neighbors. They see them not as an asset, but a liability, right? So they don't want to save anything. It just depends. Oh, man, that was bad. It depends. Oh, the back of my head, right, came up with that double entendre. All right, let's move on to Min Matter. He says, hi, John, Jolene, here's a question. It's just me, though. Jolene's that way, about 300 miles in the Bay Area. On and off, I've been researching the best foods for long-term, 5 years plus storage. While I could formulate foods that were exceptionally impressive in their nutritional content and stored for long times, the research I did indicated that there are some vitamins that simply deteriorate rapidly regardless of the method of preservation, smoking, vacuum sealing, etc. Presumably, this denaturation, lowering of quality over time, occurs because vitamins are organic. Minerals are not affected in the same way. I'm 100% agreeing with everything so far. Minerals don't change, vitamins do. They degrade over time. It's just the way it is. There's no way around it. You got to deal with it. So he says, I would argue that part of a viable long-term survival plan would be to have the long-term storable foods, but also the seeds for things like kale, strawberries, blueberries, carrots, etc., so that within a few months of a shit-it's-the-fan situation, the prepper's vitamin intake is properly supplemented. What do you think? Thank you for the great service you both provide. That is why I recommend having a supply of pills, vitamin pills, that have both vitamins and minerals in them to supplement what you're not getting out of your food. Right? Vitamin B is essential for clear thinking, for alertness, for awareness, all those things, right? The B vitamins are fantastic. So yeah, having a vegetable garden is something I've talked about lately. I've talked about it in the past. I said you should have a heritage seed supply, right? If you're one of those fortunate people that lives in a really good climate and you understand the vegetation in your area, what's edible, and you've learned how nutritious it is, you're in a great position. For the rest of us, got to plant a garden. But I do recommend having vitamin supplements in addition. Take them now. They work. Right? You feel better throughout the day. You've got more energy, more zip. You're healthier. Right? Your body's getting what it needs. Processed foods, the shit they sell in stores, they've been processed, cooked, heated, dried. You know, all the things they do to food in a factory removes or degrades or depletes the nutrients value, the vitamins. So just taking supplements now is going to make a big difference in your life. But definitely when shit hits the fan, you're going to want mental alertness, top health, top conditions. Right? You're not going to want to be bloated on a bunch of calories. You need nutrients, vitamins and minerals. Very critical. Moving along, risk management comments. I spoke to ITM Trading as I was curious. I found it very invasive. They asked how much silver and gold do I have now. They pushed the numismatic coins, saying they cannot be confiscated. However, I don't think most of us are worried about that. Right? You're going to pry everything out of my cold, dead hands. Everything, right? Remember, cash used to buy metals may be reported. If you pay by check or credit card, no reporting to government. There is no limit, but some places say there is. I would not buy from one of those places. There is no limit, but some places say there is. I did read it correctly. Just kind of got scrambled up on his words. You don't have to answer questions. Some companies ask more, some ask less. I've done a fair amount of business with APMEX and SD Bullion, and I found the experience to be pleasurable. A couple of times, operators have asked me, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? And I'm not going to explain my plan to them. Why I need smaller denominations, or why I need junk silver, or why I want this, or why I want that, or why I want so much or not so much. You know, they ask in a way because they're curious and they want to learn as well. Some of these questions they ask. AppMex keeps track in a precious metals portfolio that is accessible through you and your password on their account, the stuff they sell you. And you can also add materials you've bought from other sites, other places, from the store down the street. But you can also go in there and erase all that shit. Right? It's not something they own or they demand to be audited. But I found it to be a useful tool. And at some point, like if something bad happens, or I feel uncomfortable, or there's an order to confiscate, I'm going to go clean that off. And of course, you can erase internet records, right? They have the ability to go back and see what I had in the past. They can go back, they can go through every account of everyone who's bought any precious metals anywhere. You know, so if you want to be anonymous, absolutely anonymous, you can't do it with an over the internet or over the phone company, because they got to ship it to you. They got your address. So you've got to go and you've got to spend less than $3,000 in cash. Definitely less than $10,000, but just to play it safe, don't spend any more than $2,500 in cash, so that the business, like a gold or silver merchant, you say, I want $2,500 in silver. What do you got? And he'll tell you what he's got, and you buy it. You hand him cash. There's no credit card, no check, no record, no driver's license, nothing. Because he doesn't have a requirement by Title 31 USC to do so. You know, that's one of those things. How much anonymity do you need? How much do you think it matters? How comfortable are you? If ITM, of course, I don't like someone telling me what to buy. I don't mind taking a little advice. Hey, what do you think of this? Or they may say, are you interested in? And I'll listen to their story. But some of us have different levels about what is invasive and what isn't. One of the people I talked to, I felt a little peeved by it. Another person, I didn't mind so much. Kind of their attitude mixing with my attitude, you know. But anyways, the idea, though, is to protect yourself by not leaving 100% of your wealth in a bank so that they can confiscate it in the event of a economic emergency. Okay, let's move on to Robin G. says, researchers are forecasting that we will stand a better than 50% chance of experiencing record level heat over the next few years. This could affect our food production? Question mark. Yes, it can. Have you heard of using shade cloth to shield your crops during extreme heat waves? Another good reason to double up on food and water storage. Yes, it is a great reason to double up on food and water storage. I've heard of using shade screens because some vegetable crops don't require massive amounts of heat, or they can't take great heat. That's why they grow different foods in different regions. You know, you want carrots, go down to Bakersfield. You want cotton, you go to another state, right? You want lettuce. Now, lettuce is soft, right? It's really watery, right? You know, lettuce, a head of lettuce. Well, they grow that shit down in Brawley, California, which is like 1 mile from the sun. And I always wonder how you can get such a crisp, juicy, water-filled head of lettuce from a place that is basically, you know, the same temperature as lava. So yeah, know your vegetables, know your crops, and if things get hotter, you just make the changes accordingly. In most cases, plants just need more water because they're evaporating. Just like we sweat, they evaporate their water away. So it's going to require more water. But I do not, though, it's not my experience to know what a greater increase in UV rays does to vegetables. Does it help them? Does it hurt them? Does it not fucking matter? I don't know. That might be something worth researching. But yeah, if it gets hotter, in most cases, that is just going to be a good thing. Corn, for example. Maize. It loves heat. Same with tomatoes. They love heat. They love their water, too. And that is a consideration. Considering shit hits the fan, you may or may not have access to sufficient quantities of water to grow a garden to get the yield that you need. That's why practicing gardening ahead of time not only supplies you with nutritious, tasty goodies, but you get used to understanding what it is that's available to you. All right, moving along. Cracked Eggs writes, my kid wants to join the Scouts. Will this help them in the future with their preparedness? I love the moniker Cracked Eggs. C-R-A-Q-U-E-D. Anyways, the answer is yes. Being a scout, whether it's a Girl Scout, Boy Scout, Cub Scout, it helps with preparedness with regard to shit hitting the fan, emergencies. It helps. I believe that scouting, I believe that FFA and 4-H, any of these youth activities, joining Little League, it helps prepare you because you learn to cooperate with other people. You learn to rely on yourself. It helps build your personal self-confidence, your morale, makes you a better, more well-rounded person. You don't have to be a scout to be the best at all those things, but I think it helps nurture it, helps bring it out. Great question. Scouting is a good thing. And yeah, and if you haven't seen it, I saw it with my kids a couple of years ago. The Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, something like that. That title, funny movie. All right, Anthony writes, my regular job pays the bills and my family, food, etc. My scrap money is what I use for my preps. The last few times I've gone to the scrapyard, the prices have literally dropped by half. What do you think will happen further down the line? Do you think the tariffs are going to make it extremely hard for certain trades and jobs to even operate? Or do you think America will get its shit together in order to overcome this bump in the road? Again, John, thanks for the constant content you put out there for people. I appreciate your time. And I appreciate you guys, all of you. All of you. My answer is the scrap metal prices have taken a shit because of the tariffs. Because of fear and uncertainty in the markets. I happen to have a trusted person back on the East Coast. He has a scrapyard. He's a he's a good man. Some things you just know. Anyways, he works in the recycling industry. At the corporate level, he deals with everything big time. Not a couple of cans or a couple of garbage cans, but rather shipping containers full of recycled materials. And China's not taking them, which means there's a glut on the market. The supply is up, the demand is down, price goes to shit. In my particular area, I've noticed it. A bin full of CRV glass that was $150 is now $45. Almost makes it not worth taking to recycle because of the amount of labor involved. And this is on a professional level. I'm like, okay, it just cost me $45 in labor to go get $45. When it was $165, I did a lot of things there. I made a little bit of the money back, right? I was good for the environment, right? That sort of thing. Now it's a push. Paper has been a push for me for years. I used to do these giant cardboard bales, and they would pay us $30. Then it went down to $3 fucking bucks. This was back in 08, 09, 10, right? It was like, why even take the time? It's not worth I pay more in labor than I get in the materials. Ridiculous. It's just going to get worse. I mean, it could get better. I don't mean to be a pessimist or some shit like that, but I really think it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's just my opinion. Because there's no hope in sight. Now, if Paul had told me, he said, John, guess what? We're starting to get paid more. Things are looking up. I'd be like, yep, in a month or so, things are going to look up because we'll get that trickle-down effect. As our garbage trickles up and goes to China and they pay us for it, right? They're like, okay, everything's good. Right now, they're not taking anything. What I do know, according to the articles that I've been provided with, is companies here in country, they're rather than trying to ship our recyclables overseas, they're looking at further breaking them down, processing them, and then reusing them here. So, but that's going to have an effect also on the new metals market. That means mining, refining, manufacturing. So it's going to be tight and tough for a while. I expect that everyone is going to need to start tightening their fucking belts up. You know, tighten your belt. Get used to it. This is the way it's going to fucking be, and it's not fun. Right? When we get the shit hits the fan, if it's shit hits the fan light, it's going to be even less fun. Right? And I'm anticipating that. Doesn't mean that a major, complete catastrophe could happen. It doesn't mean that. Right? It can still happen. It can still be triggered naturally or intentionally. But I'm anticipating a shit hits the fan light. And we aren't even close to it right now. We're nearing again. And I've been expecting this and fucking waiting for it with the Dow getting close to the top again. Right? Getting close to the top again. The market's at its highest. We're supposed to be wealthy and prosperous. Why are all these other indicators telling us it's not looking pretty? Why is it companies are tightening up? Their fucking asses are so tight, they probably sound like a snare drum if you, like, rasped a stick off it. They are that tight. They're cutting labor. They're cutting inventory. They're cutting manufacturing to as narrow a few lines as possible. That's what I've seen in my trades. As a facility manager, as a general contractor, I am seeing manufacturers holding off on making products until they're ordered. Even if we're talking about one faucet. A commercial faucet. Are you kidding me? I've got to wait 6 weeks? Yes. Well, damn it, I wish I didn't need that specialized faucet. But what they don't want to do is they don't want to invest the time and materials and labor and then have that inventory sit on a shelf for an indeterminate amount of time. It could sit there a week. It could sit there a year. They don't want that time and money invested in that. So they've gone to just-in-time ordering and now just-in-time manufacturing. It's not quite in time enough for me, but that's what you have to deal with. I've dealt with it in plumbing. I've dealt with it in HVAC. I've dealt with it in electronics. All across the spectrum. And we're going to see more of it. If we stop doing business with China, you go to Walmart, instead of 12 TVs, you're going to have 3 or 4 TVs to choose from. Instead of having ranges size 22 all the way up to 65 or 80 or whatever the fuck they're up to now on TVs, you might have a 30, a 40, and a 50, and that's all you got. And in the cheap one, the 30-inch, you'll have 2 options. Right? I'm ready for it. I'm expecting it. I was a kid in the 70s, but I remember the 70s. All right, John Lyxicatos says, assuming that you have read Atlas Shrugged, which I have, and then we are talking about non-conditioned black SHTF, where we become a police communist state, 1984, Brave New World, do you think it is likely that we will start seeing many people who cherish freedom and who are producers going galt? When I was a young man out of the Marines, I spoke with a man that I respected. And I said, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this. And if I was in charge of the telecom companies, that's the first thing I thought of, because there was this big deal with AT&T back in the early 90s. I said, if I was a telecom company, I would cut services and do this and that if I wanted to be a sneaky bastard, and I could take over communications. I would monopolize it. I said, but, you know, we could apply that to fuel. You know, that gas station down there and that one down there, they seem to be screwing us. And I was making these general observations. He goes, John, what you need to do is you need to read Atlas Shrugged. Because it talks about these companies and corporations that take things over and they pull back, and it's just really an interesting read. And it really is a great read. Ayn Rand was a very intelligent person who escaped communism. And she wrote several good books. Atlas Shrugged, the most famous among them, has some very interesting lessons. John Galt was a guy who invented a perpetual motion energy machine. And people heard of his name, but his technology got yanked and hidden. You know, so there's a lot of parallels in that book and real life and the potentials, right? And it wasn't a Brave New World or a 1984 Orwellian nightmare-style book. It was more about the ridiculous ideas and concepts that governments have, people in government. And I was reading that book back then, in the early 90s, and I thought, nobody in government can be that fucking stupid. And I've had to eat those words. Because government is now so ridiculously inept, so boobishly incompetent, that you would be shocked. I'm sure you could read Atlas Shrugged today and think it was a contemporary work. Now, going John Galt means just going underground, giving up, not participating in the system so that it'll crash faster. That is happening. I've considered many times myself, John, why don't you move to Alaska? Why don't you move here? Why don't you go there? Go overseas. Take your wealth to the extent you can and just leave. Fuck it. Let it go down. You know, I've thought about that. You know, what do you do? How do you fix it? You know, tried fixing it, tried helping. You know, such a confusing question because I can't change anything. Right? The system is doing what it's doing. Donald Trump, a billionaire, got elected president. And assuming he wants everything fixed, has got his fucking hands full. Right? He's fighting ignorance and greed on a level that is unfathomable for us regular peeps. So going gulp, kind of giving up and letting everything crash. Next question, he says, will people start creating gulches here and in other parts of the world in response to tyranny? The answer again is yes. A lot of corporations have tried leaving restrictive, harmful jurisdictions and going to emerging market countries to see if they can make more money there, see if they can make a better product there, see if they can stop rewarding bad government by leaving one and going to another one. That stuff has happened. Right? Sometimes it's done for a good reason, sometimes it's done for a corrupt, greedy, unethical reason. You know, companies that are leaving the U.S. because they want cheap labor overseas that they can exploit and get cheaper raw materials overseas that they can exploit and then sell the product back here to America at a slight discount so you and I as consumers can feel good about getting a slightly cheaper product that breaks a little quicker anyways. But that company that moved overseas, they're making 3, 4, 5 times as much money that if they were manufacturing here with good, honest labor, good, honest materials, and a good quality finished product. I know. Next I'm going to slap a bumper sticker on my forehead. They used to have these in the 80s and the 70s. It said, buy made in the USA. Right? I buy USA products. But Gulches was like this valley where all these businesses moved all of their manufacturing and all of their thinking together. It was really cute in the book, except in real life, the amount of factories and production facilities and storage facilities for storing raw materials to make everything from appliances to automotive things, to household products. You can't put it all in a valley somewhere. Right? Industry is so huge. The industrial demand of the planet now. You can't have a gulch anywhere. You can't hide the technology and the raw materials and means of producing it anywhere. You know, so basically factories just shut down. Happened in the Soviet Union when it fell, and when the West takes it on the chin, to whatever degree, factories will continue to shut down. Right? Reset. Pain. Suffering. Get prepared. Finally, he asked, how likely do you think it is that we would leave the U.S. altogether and that a gulch would form in some previously uninhabited land or in countries that are of little interest to the major political and financial powers? My response to that question, and these have all been dynamite questions, right? Sometimes I can hit them out of the park, other times I can't. But this one I can hit out of the park. This planet has been picked over like a motherfucker. When I go out, I've taken trips out into the desert. I've gone through the West, you know, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. And you're thinking, man, it's miles and miles and miles of valleys and mountains, and Jesus, it's huge. But a human being has walked every one of those ravines and crevasses and valleys. Why? Because they were looking for gold and silver, that's why. And then uranium, then iron. Anywhere there is a rich deposit, right, a resource deposit, there's something there. Right? They won't leave it. They're like, okay, I was looking for gold, but I found this. Right? Copper. Sold. And then you would work what you found. Forests are easy. Right? A bunch of fucking trees, that's where the timber is. Let's go there. Finding minerals in the ground, it takes a lot more time. But yeah, those men walked that. You'll be driving along the fucking highway in Nevada. All of a sudden, there's a giant crevasse. Fucking mountain is missing, and they're digging a giant pit to get whatever mineral resource is right there. It's like, why is it there? And they go, we just don't know. That's just where it was when we found it. You can't go 1 mile one way or the other and find the same amount. It is where it's at. So in order to find where the resources are at, every step of the way on this whole planet, they've looked for it and found it. In Russia, why do they have steel-cased ammunition? Because they don't have the mineral resources to create brass. Not in sufficient quantities, and they don't want to waste it on ammunition brass. So they came up with steel casing with that coating on it. That's why Russian ammunition has steel casing. Right? Because they don't have the resources. They'll do the copper jacketed bullets, rifle bullets, but they aren't going to waste all that copper making more brass. So brass is it's an alloy made with copper and tin, I believe. Or is that bronze? Fuck, I don't know. Been a long day. Anyways, Russia has a lot of resources, and then some things they have a little less of, so they're more judicious with it. So the thing about there being some place on this planet where you could hide, c'est impossible. You can't go to the Antarctic. There's tons of resources there, but you're not allowed there. They're guarding the fuck out of that place. I still want to know what they got down there and what they found buried under the ice. But the thing about big countries like the U.S. and big countries like China and Russia is it's a big country, so we have a lot of resources and a variety of resources. So these countries, like the ones I described, the large ones, Canada and Mexico and others, if they're big enough, they can be more self-sufficient and rely less on other countries to provide the raw materials they need for industry. It's a matter of resources and economics and cost. So if there was some valley somewhere, say in the mountains of Peru or Argentina or in the Congo, you could hide out there. But the country and the area is unlikely to have the quantity and the variety of resources you need for the products you're making. It's only the really big nations, and again the big three are China, Russia, and the U.S. Canada to a limited extent, parts of Europe to a limited extent, parts of Africa. I mean, it's all to a limited extent. But there are some countries that can be self-sufficient, right? And if you can't have it, you just do without. And we don't like to do without. We're fucking spoiled now. So we trade with each other to get the things we want. So the Gulch thing, I think it was interesting. It was good for the story, right? It helped the plot, but it's just the feasibility of it, having a hidden valley somewhere with a bunch of industry in it, and then how would you get all the shipping containers there to bring them all the mineral resources you need? But I do believe that people with great ideas, they can't do anything with them because of monopoly interests, product development suppression, right? Because it has to do with competition. Nobody wants competition when you're the king, right? It's not good for the consumer, but the king of whatever industry. For example, Ford Motor Company, if it was the only auto manufacturer in the United States or in North America, and someone else said, oh, we want to start another auto manufacturing facility, Ford is going to do everything in its power to stop that, to get in the way, right? They're going to punish any company that wants to sell them raw materials by saying, if you sell them those raw materials, we're going to stop buying from you, and we're going to buy from someone else, or we're going to open our own factory, or we're going to go over to China or whatever, and we're going to fuck you over so you don't help them. Right? It's the same thing the U.S. government does, right? We don't like Russia, so no one's allowed to do shit with Russia, and we're going to punish you if you do anything with Russia. And it's a bullying thing, right? But it's just not possible for corporations to do a gulch and survive. Everyone would know about it; they would figure it out, because you have to have those raw resources, raw mineral, wood metals, right? And then to have those factories in a gulch, you would have to have a lot of food. So you would need a very large agricultural operation. Very difficult to do, right, in a valley anywhere of any size. And there's certainly not any country anywhere that I'm aware of on the maps that I've looked at where it's possible. Right? Especially with satellites and spy planes and blimps and radar and all kinds of shit. The government would figure it out. Right? It's not that easy to hide things, especially when you're talking about things on an industrial size and scale. So great questions. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you for supporting The Prepared Mind. I have not mentioned he who shall not be mentioned, but everyone else has. And basically everyone else has covered my feelings on it as well. He whose name shall not be mentioned will not get it today. You guys be cool. Remember, chance favors. The Prepared Mind is yours. You need food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. You need a plan. Don't get taken by surprise. And no plan is foolproof. You can have backup plans and more backup plans, and nothing is guaranteed 100%. Do the very best you can with the resources you have. One of the things that has been interesting in my life is when you least expect it, good things can happen. You can meet people that you didn't think even existed. Right? You'll get help from places that you had no idea was going to happen. Don't rely on that 100% and go, I'm not going to prep because John said everything good's going to come my way, like it's a fucking magic from the Tooth Fairy. But don't lose heart. I've had a lot of people, they continue to say, how is it that I'm going to find a prepper group? Well, it's hard. It's hard. It's not an easy task. You know, because you're talking, and of course we all want the best prepper group possible, the best defense, the best skills, right? The most agreeable and best communicating group, you know, that's trustworthy and all those things. It's hard to get all of those things. Nobody gets all of those things, right? The best thing you can do, or is the only thing you can do, and that is your very best. Remember, you're the expert in your world. It takes a little confidence. It takes some bravado. It takes some humility to be a prepper. You know, but never give up hope. Never quit. Right? Great lessons in life. Never quit. You know, yeah, very important. Remember words of wisdom from those that have come before you, because it'll come in handy later. I'm struck by it all the time. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, lots of love. Right? You got to have love in your hearts for everything. Thank you very much for the generosity, the kindness that you have shown me. And I hope that you feel you've gotten the same from me back. So you guys be cool, Semper Fi, and Godspeed to us all. We're going to need all the help we can get. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Good night. Or rather, good morning. Or should I do the Truman thing? Good night, good morning, and whatever. See you later.